The Zarlaxian science vessel, Gentle Inquiry, drifted through the cosmic void like a cautious tourist in a questionable neighborhood. Which, if you think about it, wasn't far from the truth. Captain Vrax, preliminary scans complete. No signs of intelligent life, announced Science Officer Velna, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence as she reviewed the data. Typical Velna, brilliant enough to calculate quantum trajectories in her sleep but couldn't read a room if it came with instruction manual. Excellent work, Officer Velna, replied Captain Vrax, straightening his ceremonial neck frill as he did whenever he was about to say something he thought sounded important. Log the findings according to Protocol Section 47B, Subsection 12. I should mention that Captain Vrax had never met a regulation he didn't worship like a religious text. The crew often joked that he slept with the protocol manual under his pillow. They weren't wrong. Captain? Communications Officer Plex's voice cracked nervously. Poor kid was barely out of the academy, still growing into his exoskeleton. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures at bearing 047 Mark 193. Unusual how, Officer Plex? Vrax demanded, his frill now fully extended in what the crew recognized as his danger pose. They're moving against the solar wind, sir. And fast. The bridge fell silent. Nothing natural moved against the solar wind. Magnify Sector 047-193, ordered Vrax, his voice steady despite the tremor in his secondary appendages. The view screen flickered to life, revealing sleek, predatory shapes cutting through space with lethal grace. Vrax vessels, whispered Velna, her voice barely audible. The apex predators. For a species that prided itself on scientific objectivity, the Zarlaxians sure knew how to panic efficiently. Within moments, the bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Evasive maneuvers. Vrax commanded. Plex, send emergency protocols to Central Command. 3 Vrax ships accelerated toward them, weapons bristling. Communications jammed, Plex reported, panic evident in his voice. They're blocking all standard frequencies. Captain Vrax made a decision that would change galactic history. Send distress signal on all frequencies, encrypted and open. Full spectrum broadcast. Even the restricted bands? Plex asked, mandibles clicking in shock. All frequencies, officer. Someone must hear us. As the Vrax closed in, the Gentle Inquiry screamed into the void. Little did they know who would answer. Captain Elena Reyes of the human battleship, Relentless, was enjoying her coffee when the universe decided to ruin her day. The bitter military-grade sludge that passed for caffeine on long patrols splashed across her uniform as alarms blared. What fresh hell is this, she muttered, dabbing at the stain with dignity that only career military could muster in the face of wardrobe disasters. Commander Jackson Way strode onto the bridge, his perpetually perfect posture making everyone else feel like they were slouching. Captain, we've intercepted an encrypted distress signal on multiple bands, including some very old frequencies. Translation? Reyes asked, tossing the soaked napkin into a disposal unit. Working on it, Captain, called Lieutenant Dima Petrov from Tactical, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The burly Russian had a gift for languages, both human and machine. It's not from any recognized Galactic Union species. Wonderful, Reyes sighed. 3 months into our first deep space patrol, and we're already finding trouble. Command will be thrilled. Could be a trap, Way pointed out, because of course he did. The man had never met a worst-case scenario he didn't immediately adopt as a pet. Could also be someone actually in trouble, countered Reyes. Petrov, analysis? Signal appears genuine, Captain. Distress patterns match universal emergency protocols, though the encryption is unusual. Reyes drummed her fingers on her armrest. Humanity was still the new kid on the galactic block, watched suspiciously by older spacefaring races. Protocol dictated non-interference until formal diplomatic channels were established. Protocol, however, hadn't accounted for humans being, well, human. Plot intercept course, Reyes ordered. Full tactical alert. Inform the fleet. Captain, Wei lowered his voice. Admiralty directives specifically state that we should be good neighbors, Reyes finished. And good neighbors help when someone screams for help. Besides, what's the point of having the biggest stick in the playground if you never get to wave it around? As the human fleet changed course, the universe held its breath. The human fleet dropped out of FTL like uninvited relatives at a dinner party, sudden, loud, and causing immediate regret in everyone who witnessed their arrival. Sweet merciful cosmos, breathed Captain Thrix as the view screen filled with the unmistakable silhouettes of human warships. His frill deflated so quickly it made a sad whistling sound. We've summoned Deathworlders. Science Officer Velna actually fainted, which was quite a sight given Zarlaxian physiology. Imagine a fainting goat, but with more tentacles and a lab coat. On the Relentless, Captain Reyes assessed the situation with the calm of someone who'd found exactly the trouble she was looking for. Those smaller vessels are attacking the larger ship, Wei reported. Design unknown, but weapon signatures suggest Vrax technology. Vrax? Petrov frowned. The murder squids of the Cygnus arm? Charming nickname, Lieutenant, Reyes said dryly. Open communications with the vessel under attack. The view screen flickered to show a Zarlaxian bridge crew in various states of panic. Captain Thrix had recovered enough to stand, though his natural blue coloration had faded to a sickly gray. This is Captain Elena Reyes of Earth Alliance vessel Relentless. We received your distress call. How can we assist? The translation software struggled momentarily before Thrix's reply came through. Deathworlders? You respond to distress signals now before consuming survivors? Reyes blinked. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're here to help. Help, extract our organs? Plex whispered, audible despite not being on camera. Meanwhile, the Vrax attackers had noticed the new arrivals. 3 predatory vessels broke off from harassing the gentle inquiry and turned toward the human fleet. Incoming hostiles, Wei announced unnecessarily. Well, Reyes sighed, diplomacy was worth a shot. Petrov, target their weapon systems. Try not to blow them up entirely. Might make a bad first impression on our new friends. The friends who think we eat organs? Wei muttered. Cultural misunderstandings happen in every relationship, Reyes shrugged, then addressed the still horrified Zarlaxians. Captain Thrix, I suggest you move your vessel behind our defensive line. We'll handle your unwelcome guests. As the human ships moved into formation, Captain Thrix made the universe's most reluctant tactical decision, choosing between certain death by Vrax or potential death by Deathworlder. Like choosing between digestion and incineration, he mumbled, ordering evasive maneuvers toward the human fleet. The Vrax attack fleet surged forward with the confidence of apex predators who'd never become prey, right until human point defense systems turned space around them into a light show that would make a supernova feel inadequate. Are they laughing? Captain Thrix asked incredulously as the human comm channels leaked through the translation matrix. The Zarlaxian crew huddled around view screens, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination. Indeed, on the bridge of the Relentless, Lieutenant Petrov was chuckling as he orchestrated the defensive barrage. These Vrax shields have a fluctuation pattern. Every 4th cycle, there's a 0.3-second vulnerability. Exploit it, Reyes ordered, leaning forward in her chair. Already programmed smart missiles to hit precisely. Now. Across the battlefield, 3 Vrax ships suddenly found their shields penetrated by warheads that detonated inside their defensive envelopes. Not enough to destroy them, but enough to make them very, very angry. They're adjusting their shield frequencies, Wei reported. Learning. So are we, Reyes grinned. Tactical pattern Epsilon, 7. Let's give them something they've never seen before. The human fleet, previously arranged in a standard defensive formation, suddenly broke apart in what appeared to be complete chaos. Ships accelerated in seemingly random vectors, engines flaring. On the gentle inquiry, Science Officer Velna had recovered enough to monitor the battle. What are they doing? This violates every tactical doctrine in known space. The answer came moments later as human vessels executed a series of impossible maneuvers, cutting acceleration at precisely calculated points, using their own mass and momentum to slide into firing positions while conserving fuel. It was less like watching spacecraft and more like watching predatory fish in their natural environment. "They're using gravity itself as a weapon," Velna whispered, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Commander Wei's voice came through on the tactical frequency. Flashpoints established. "All vessels, execute Fire Plan Delta." The synchronized assault that followed wasn't just effective, it was theatrical. Human ships fired from directions the Vrax hadn't even considered defending, hitting multiple weak points simultaneously. "Boarding party ready," Reyes announced, strapping into an assault harness. "Wei, you have the con." "Captain, regulations state that commanding officers should not have this much fun." "I agree, but I'm doing it anyway." As the Vrax flagship listed helplessly, its engines dark and weapons offline, a human boarding craft latched onto its hull like a remora on a shark. Captain Reyes led the assault team personally, her combat armor making her look like a demon from ancient Zarlaxian mythology. "The humans are boarding the Vrax vessel," Plex reported, voice quivering. "They're fighting them hand to hand." Thrix's frill extended involuntarily. What kind of species looks at spacefaring predators and decides to punch them? The remaining Vrax vessels, witnessing their flagship being systematically dismantled from the inside out, did something unprecedented in recorded encounters. They retreated, accelerating away from the battlefield with the desperation of creatures who had just discovered they weren't at the top of the food chain after all. "Deathworlders," Velna murmured. The legends didn't do them justice. The aftermath of battle resembled a peculiar cocktail party where half the guests had just tried to kill the other half. Damage assessment teams moved through both vessels, while Captain Reyes stood on the bridge of the Gentle Inquiry, facing Captain Thrix in what diplomatic historians would later call the most awkward first contact in galactic history. "So," Reyes began, removing her helmet, "you thought we were going to eat you?" Thrix's frill fluttered in embarrassment. The historical records described humans as bone-crushing deathworlders who consume their enemies. "We may have misinterpreted that somewhat." "Only somewhat?" Reyes raised an eyebrow. "We only eat our enemies on special occasions. Tuesdays, mainly." The look of horror on Thrix's face was priceless until Reyes laughed. "That was a joke, Captain." "Humor. We don't actually eat sentient species." "Ah, yes. Humor." Thrix attempted what might have been a smile, if Zarlaxian facial muscles worked that way. The result looked more like indigestion. Science Officer Velna had overcome her initial terror and was now circling Lieutenant Petrov, scanning him with various instruments. "Fascinating bone density. And your muscle fiber arrangement, simply extraordinary. May I have a tissue sample?" Captain?" Petrov called, leaning away from the enthusiastic alien scientist. "Velna," Thrix scolded, "we've discussed appropriate first contact protocols. But his cellular regeneration rate could revolutionize our medical science." Meanwhile, Communications Officer Plex had cornered a human ensign and was practicing human expressions. "Hi. 5, he attempted, raising a tentacle appendage. The ensign gamely slapped it, causing Plex to vibrate with excitement. "I have completed a human friendship ritual." In the mess hall, human crew members had set up an impromptu cultural exchange, sharing ration packs, playing music, and teaching increasingly confused Zarlaxians how to play poker. "Your species evolved on a world with 1.3 times standard gravity?" Thrix asked incredulously as Reyes guided him through the ship. "With atmospheric toxins and apex predators?" "Earth has its challenges," Reyes shrugged. "But it's home. And yet you venture into space, seeking new life and new civilizations." "We're curious. Sometimes dangerously so." Thrix considered this. The historical records described humans as violent, unpredictable savages. I see now they omitted helpful, brave, and surprisingly pleasant. "We contain multitudes," Reyes grinned. Though I'd appreciate it if the surprisingly pleasant part made it into your official report. As human and Zarlaxian crews continued mingling, the atmosphere gradually shifted from tense to cordial to something approaching friendly. Centuries of propaganda about terrifying Deathworlders began dissolving, replaced by the simple reality of beings connecting across species boundaries. Perhaps, Vrax admitted, watching his crew laugh with their human rescuers, the legends weren't entirely accurate. The human fleet formed a protective escort around the damaged Gentle Inquiry as they navigated toward the nearest neutral space station. Captain Vrax spent most of the journey in what could only be described as an existential crisis. "Your species has fought 3 interplanetary wars amongst yourselves," he asked, scrolling through human historical records in the relentless conference room. "And yet you survived?" "We're stubborn that way," Reyes replied, sliding a mug of coffee across the table. "Try this. It's how we maintain our terrifying Deathworlder energy levels." Vrax sniffed the brew cautiously. "It smells like industrial solvent. That's the good stuff." Meanwhile, the intelligence officers from both vessels were comparing notes on the Vrax, with disturbing conclusions emerging. "They've been systematically targeting research vessels throughout the sector," Wei explained, highlighting star charts. "Your ship wasn't an isolated incident, you're the 17th known attack in the past stellar year." "But the first to survive," Velna added, her 4 eyes wide with realization. "Because you happened to dial the wrong number," Petrov said with a grin. Communications officer Plex had appointed himself the unofficial, human expert, and was now conducting tours of the Gentle Inquiry for curious human crew members. "This is where we study harmless microbes," he explained proudly. "Not like Earth microbes, which I understand can dissolve internal organs and cause violent expulsions from multiple orifices." "He means the common cold," a human ensign whispered to her colleagues. As the unlikely convoy approached the neutral station, Captain Reyes and Captain Vrax drafted a preliminary alliance agreement, the first between humans and Zarlaxians. "My superiors will have many questions," Vrax admitted, his frill fluttering anxiously. "Mine will probably court-martial me," Reyes shrugged. "Before giving me a medal. We're complicated that way. I'm beginning to see that. Perhaps this is why the ancient texts warned against Deathworlders, not because you're dangerous, but because you're unpredictable. Why not both?" Reyes winked. The space station loomed ahead, its docking bays already buzzing with activity as news of the unprecedented joint approach spread. Diplomatic envoys scrambled to prepare reception protocols while security forces maintained a wary alert status. "You realize," Vrax said quietly, "that by rescuing us, you've changed everything. The Vrax threat is greater than anyone realized, and now the galaxy knows that humans are not the monsters of legend. Just the heroes?" Reyes suggested. "Perhaps the most dangerous heroes the galaxy has ever known," Vrax replied, raising his mug of coffee in what he now understood was a human toast. "News travels faster than light in a connected galaxy, especially when that news involves Deathworlders performing suspiciously undeathworlderly deeds." Within days, the story of humans rescuing Zarlaxian spread through every diplomatic channel, backwater trading post, and disreputable bar from the galactic core to the outer rim. "Have you heard? Humans saved a Zarlaxian research vessel." "Impossible. Humans eat other species." "Not anymore, apparently. They've evolved. Or they're planning something worse." The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, with Captain Vrax's formal report as the primary agenda item. His conclusion was unequivocal: "In light of my direct experience with human intervention, I must officially recommend reconsideration of their Deathworlder classification. Their actions, while unorthodox and occasionally terrifying, demonstrated noble intent and exceptional valor." The council chambers erupted into chaos. Species that had maintained isolation policies toward Earth suddenly found themselves re-evaluating millennia of tradition. Trade guilds calculated the economic opportunities. Military strategists ran simulations incorporating human unpredictability into defense planning. Meanwhile, Earth Alliance Command was having its own crisis. "You violated 17 protocols," Captain Reyes, Admiral Zhang's hologram glowered. "Unauthorized first contact, engagement with unknown hostiles, boarding actions without approval. Yes, sir. Very thorough, sir. And saved an entire species from systematic extinction while establishing first diplomatic relations with 2 new civilizations. Reyes blinked. Sir. The President has authorized immediate expansion of your mission. You're to continue escort duties and extend formal alliance offers. The Vrax threat appears larger than anyone suspected. Intelligence suggests they've been quietly eliminating vulnerable spacefaring species for centuries. Back on the Gentle Inquiry, Communications Officer Plex had established the galaxy's first Human Appreciation Society, complete with membership badges featuring a human giving a thumbs up. They only have 5 appendages yet accomplish so much, he explained to new recruits. Truly inspiring. As Captains Reyes and Thrix finalized their joint mission plans, they shared a rare moment of reflection. You know what's truly amusing about all this? Thrix said. If we hadn't sent that distress call into the void, our species might never have met. And if my coffee hadn't spilled that morning, I might have ignored the signal, Reyes added. The universe works in mysterious ways. Usually inconvenient ones. They laughed together, human and alien finding common ground in cosmic irony. Somewhere in the depths of space, the remaining Vrax fleet retreated to lick their wounds and reconsider their hunting strategies. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more dangerous place, not because Deathworlders existed, but because they'd decided to make friends. The universe would never be the same. And honestly, it was about time things got interesting.